Imagine walking into the Dallas Cowboys defensive tackle room today and realizing the entire landscape has been violently torn down and rebuilt from scratch. A unit that was once the soft underbelly of this defense has undergone a radical, jaw-dropping transformation over the last 12 months. We are looking at a completely revolutionized trenches war machine, and the battle for survival inside this room is going to be absolute chaos. If you want to stay ahead of every single massive roster battle and deep breakdown all season long, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with fellow fans, and subscribe to the channel right now. When you look at how drastically this front office flipped the script on the interior defensive line, you have to stop and wonder, is this the most aggressive, high-stakes overhaul we have ever seen in the modern era of Dallas football? It is completely mind-boggling to digest just how fast things have changed. If you look at the timeline from this exact moment last year, right before the team packed up for training camp, to where we stand today, it is a night and day difference. In fact, if you want a stat that will completely break your brain, consider this: the longest tenured player inside the entire interior defensive line room is Jay Toya. Let that sink in for a second. It sounds completely fabricated, but it is the absolute reality. A young player who was only added to the mix recently is somehow the elder statesman of the group by default. The front office looked at what they had, decided it wasn't nearly good enough to win a championship, and completely purged the room. They didn't just tweak the edges, they blew up the foundation and brought in an entirely new army of defensive tackles. But the personnel isn't the only thing that underwent a massive mutation. The structural expectations and the literal identity of what Dallas is asking its defensive tackles to do on the field have been completely rewritten. Welcome to the world of the gap-and-a-half system. For anyone tired of watching this team get bullied on early downs, this is the schematic shift you have been praying for. This isn't the hyper-aggressive, single-gap penetration style where linemen blindly fire upfield and pray they disrupt the play. It also isn't the traditional, rigid, two-gap system where players act as human walls without any freedom to hunt. Instead, it is a brilliant, highly sophisticated blend of both worlds. The coaching staff is taking the absolute best elements of both philosophies to create a versatile, suffocating front. We are going to see a ton of five-man fronts, especially on heavy rundowns. The key to making this work is the deployment of the 4-eye technique, which is essentially a defensive lineman lining up directly on the inside shoulder of the offensive tackle. It acts very similarly to a traditional 5 technique you would see in an old-school 3-4 scheme. They will seamlessly transition between 3 down linemen with 2 edge rushers and heavy packages utilizing 3 true defensive tackles across the interior. It is all about creating structural nightmares for opposing offensive coordinators, and the front office went out and acquired specific archetypes who fit this gritty, hard-nosed mold perfectly. The names they added over the past year tell the entire story of this aggressive rebuild. You have Quinnen Williams arriving in a blockbuster move right before the deadline. You have Kenny Clark brought in via an explosive training camp trade. Then they filled out the depth by signing Otito Ogbonnia and Jonathan Bullard in free agency, drafting LT Overton, and bringing in a wave of hungry undrafted free agents like Tommy Dunn, DJ Withers, and Kelvin Gilliam Jr. Add in Adedeo Odolai through the international program, and you have a completely revamped room. This brings us to a massive, highly debated point about the sheer talent level of this unit, and I want to hear from all of you on this one. For today's question of the day, looking at the pure star power of Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark balanced against the brand new structural depth, do you believe this revamped defensive tackle room is undeniably better right now than the unit that finished the field at the end of last year? Drop a Y for yes or an N for no in the comments section below, and let's get a massive debate going. To understand why there is so much unbridled excitement around this group, you have to look at the massive star power at the top, starting with Quinnen Williams. This man is an absolute wrecking ball, and the way he talks about his new role under defensive coach Christian Parker should send shivers down the spines of opposing quarterbacks. Williams has been incredibly vocal about his passion for this new scheme, raving about how incredible it is to be around a coach who has won at an elite level everywhere he has been. The football IQ inside this coaching staff is unlocking a whole new level for Williams. He noted that learning this specific philosophy and mindset has completely opened his eyes to when he can strategically take his shots, how to read blocking schemes with surgical precision, and how to embrace the constructive criticism needed to take his game to an astronomical tier. The mutual respect between Williams and the coaching staff is palpable. Now, Some critics might point out that his raw sack numbers saw a minor dip over the last couple of seasons before he landed in Dallas. But anyone who actually watches the tape knows those numbers don't tell the whole story. The moment he put on the star, he had a historically explosive start, racking up more tackles for loss and sheer disruption in his initial stretch than we had seen from him in a very long time. Do not spend a single second worrying about how this new defensive scheme will impact his production. While the gap-and-a-half responsibilities might force him to do a bit more heavy lifting and anchor work on first and second down, the moment it hits third and long, the handcuffs are coming off. When it is 3rd and 13, the scheme doesn't matter. The instruction is simple: pin your ears back, crush the pocket, and go destroy the quarterback. Lining up right alongside him to form a terrifying duo is Kenny Clark, who is locked in as the definitive, primary nose guard for this defense. Christian Parker has a long history of praising Clark's elite tape and unique skill set at the nose position, and his role in this defense is going to be massive. When Dallas rolls out those heavy 5-man fronts and base packages, Clark will be the immovable anchor right in the middle of the storm. His job description isn't necessarily to be the flashy defender who replicates a high sack season. If he can give this team elite run-stuffing discipline, a steady pile of tackles for loss, and absorb the brutal double teams that allow the linebackers behind him to run completely free, he will be worth every single penny. It is all about maximizing his role to make the entire defensive unit cohesive and unbreakable. Behind those two superstars, the real blue-collar work begins. To make a heavy hybrid front function, you need rotational players who absolutely love the dirty work, the unglamorous, painful execution in the trenches that never shows up on a fantasy football stat sheet. Dallas has a trio of players who are heavily projected to secure their roster spots and handle these crucial duties: Otito Ogbonnia, Jonathan Bullard, and the highly anticipated rookie LT Overton. Ogbonnia is the ultimate Swiss Army knife for the interior line. Blessed with incredible mass and raw, natural leverage, he can seamlessly slide between the 4-eye technique and the traditional 3 technique. If Kenny Clark ever needs a breather, Ogbonnia steps up as the immediate, primary backup nose guard. He is the definitive swing interior defensive lineman for this team. You aren't going to see him stuffing the traditional box score, but his value is entirely measured by how clean he keeps the second level of the defense. Jonathan Bullard brings a slightly different flavor. While he doesn't possess the sheer, overwhelming size of Ogbonnia, he plays with an unrelenting, nasty edge. He is a pure dirty work specialist who can give you elite reps at the 5 technique or hold his ground in specialized short yardage packages. Then you have the rookie, LT Overton, who represents an incredibly exciting schematic fit. At Alabama, Overton was constantly deployed in a heavy role where he was asked to set a hard edge, consume blockers, and play disciplined run defense rather than flying upfield to chase stats. If you tried to drop Overton into a standard, traditional 4-3 defense as a pure edge rusher, the fit would look awkward because he lacks that elite, quick-twitch speed. But inside this specific, heavy hybrid system in Dallas, his fit is absolutely beautiful. He can function as a heavy base defensive end or slide inside as a situational interior pass rusher, offering a level of pocket-crushing upside that neither Bullard nor Ogbonnia naturally possesses. This brings us right back to Jay Toia, the default longest-tenured member of the room. Despite that technical title, Toia is entering training camp with absolutely nothing handed to him. He is a textbook, old-school space eater, a human boulder whose sole job is to refuse to give an inch of ground. But in a modern NFL that demands lateral mobility, quick processing, and gap-and-a-half flexibility, he has to prove to a completely new coaching staff that he can offer more than just a big frame. He is going to have to fight tooth and nail just to survive final roster cuts and claim a spot on the active 53. The pressure on the bubble is amplified by 3 highly motivated undrafted free agents who are going to see a ridiculous amount of action during the preseason. The coaching staff is obviously going to bubble-wrap superstars like Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark during exhibition games, which opens the door for Tommy Dunn, DJ Withers, and Kelvin Gilliam Jr. to play non-stop, high-stakes football. With minimal financial guarantees tied up in them, this is a pure, unadulterated meritocracy. Tommy Dunn possesses an incredibly intriguing frame, standing at 6'3" and nearly 295 pounds, making him a natural candidate to develop into that heavy 4-eye role. However, the wild card that everyone needs to keep a close eye on is Kelvin Gilliam Jr. The former Duke transfer is an exceptional athlete with raw, explosive juice off the line of scrimmage. If the developmental coaches can refine his technique and help him translate that raw athleticism into consistent football instincts, he has the ceiling to be an absolute steal. DJ Withers actually put up more consistent college production than Dunn, but entering the league with lower financial backing means he has to deliver dynamic, eye-catching plays the moment the preseason lights turn on. All three of these young players are locked in a fierce battle, primarily aiming to lock down a developmental home on the practice squad. Finally, rounding out the entire 91-man off-season roster is the return of Adedeo Odolai. Standing at a towering 6'5" and over 270 pounds, the UK product is a fascinating physical specimen. Because he is a part of the NFL's International Player Pathway program, he provides Dallas with an incredibly valuable asset, a completely free, exempt practice squad spot that doesn't count against the traditional roster limits. While he won't be pushing for a spot on the active game day roster when the regular season kicks off, his rare physical traits and elite size make him the perfect developmental project to keep in the building. This defensive tackle room has been completely torn down, re-engineered, and filled with explosive talent, setting the stage for an absolute war in the trenches.